Welcome everyone to In the Hot Seat. For our repeat viewers, thanks for joining us again. For those new to the show, every 2 weeks we put an industry expert or customer in the hot seat for lively discussion, debate, maybe a little discourse as we try to humanize the digital experience. All aspects of the customer lifecycle are up for discussion, as well as the technologies used throughout each phase of the journey. This episode's a first in a new series, The End of Legacy Applications, and it focuses on automating application modernization. Jody, I was looking around at a couple of articles this morning that I'd saved, and I I saw this one stat that I think was pretty interesting. 92% of enterprises say that they're actively working on at least one application modernization project, and according to that same survey, 79% or four in five admitted that they had experienced a failure, app modernization failure. And they were talking about the fact that it was, complex, expensive, risky. I mean, it's very, very interesting and somewhat negative survey.
Kind of scary, right?
Mhm.
Especially when we think about everything that's going on right and how connected we all are, how reliant we are on technologies. I think so when you were sent through some information and I was researching the episode, kind of going along the same lines, right? I was finding stats showing Fortune 500 companies, 70% are on technologies that's decades old.
Yeah.
That's scary,
Well,
right?
I mean,
And it's not,
even
you can't do this and move over, right?
no,
I mean,
you can't.
it's complex.
And it's kind of like the whole Y2K scare thing we were all going through. They were doing all this modernization, Fortran, COBOL, all these old apps. But the truth is, there's still tons of old code out there.
Oh, yeah.
I was reading this article in the CIO magazine the other day, and I think it's interesting. They were talking about the fact that it's cost so much to run those old applications and support the infrastructure that it is really a problem. And so, that, and if you add to that the fact that you don't have any, you have no new features, no new capabilities, and think about a COBOL application to now. I mean, we probably added a couple of new things in between. Um, and you know,
Sorry, go ahead.
no, it's a huge liability, I think.
Well, let's take a step further and think about it not only from the technology, but you need the people, right? When was the last time someone came out that's, in their 20s and knows COBOL?
Say, I'm going to learn COBOL.
Right.
Well, actually, we are getting to a place now with generative AI and coding assistants where that part of it we might actually be able to solve, but just the rest of the whole ecosystem problem, like a lot of for a while, companies were just trying to lift and shift, right? They were just taking whatever they had, putting it in the cloud, and that was supposed to solve the problem. But it's as we have learned, the cloud is not cheap. Like using cloud infrastructure is not a cheap alternative, and you still don't have all those new capabilities.
Right. Well, and just going back to your statement on the AI, which I agree with you, right? AI is bringing us forward in a lot of ways in terms of how we can use it for a baseline coding, but you still need somebody to check that, right? You need that cross check, the sanity check, and if you don't have the individuals who have the knowledge on some of this old legacy, I mean, we're in a complex state. Right?
It is. It is. And I mean, I think the thing is, the only thing that does is a force multiplier, right? If I can code using generative AI tools and have one architect that knows COBOL versus having to have 20 programmers that know COBOL, I mean, that's something. But even that, like I said, it doesn't really solve this idea of fundamentally rebuilding everything from the ground up, and to do that manually is a huge investment.
Well, it's a good thing that we have somebody in the hot seat today to talk about this and some of the challenges. And I think we have somebody who is very well versed. Todd Ingersoll is joining us, and he has over 20 years experience. He has served in many IT leadership and IT executive roles inside successful enterprise software and service organizations. He's been expressly interested in successfully overcoming app modernization challenges. his firsthand experience, and I love this part of his bio, his dissatisfaction with the limitations and business impact of the traditional options for application modernization led him to create Aspen ESS. And first off, I love the company name, and I cannot wait to, I want to dive into that a little bit with Todd, but let's bring him in.
Yeah, great.
Hey, Todd.
Hey,
Hello,
Todd.
hello.
How are you?
I'm great. The two of you are hired, by the way, to help us out with marketing and sales engagements, just customer communications. Spot on.
It is something what we do, I guess. So
First of all, I love that part in your bio when it explicitly states your dissatisfaction is what drove, right? When you think about how all of these technologies come about, it's really because somebody sat there and was like, I'm so done with this, right? And I love that. And I love the name of your company. Can we start there? I love Aspen ESS. So for those tuning in, I know this has nothing to do with the episode, but can you please just give the 20 seconds on where that company name comes from?
Sure, I'll steal a second more. Happy birthday to my mom. Happy birthday,
Nice.
Mom.
Happy birthday.
Susie. So the name, I think it's fair. I wanted to start this business, but I definitely have others. Co-founder Mark Yates, business advisor who's turned into someone who's really helping us in a lot of meaningful ways. So I'm not the only one here. Don't want to take all the credit for this, but the name itself, I'm a kid who grew up in Colorado, hiked a lot, been in the outdoors a lot. I love aspen trees, and then moving to Arizona in '83. There's also I still do a lot outdoors, and there's plenty of aspen trees here as well. And one unique thing about aspen groves, if you're looking at a bunch of these really, really magnificent trees, those aren't individual trees. That's one living organism. And the entirety of an aspen grove is its health. It's sustained by one root structure. So that foundation really is what makes that whole thing work. And it's principally responsible for why these aspen groves, even when individual trees come and go, but why that individual organism lasts as long as it does, hundreds, sometimes thousands of years. And so the metaphor, this proprietary technology stack that we've developed, it is our foundation in terms of how we run the business. So it's app modernization, but it also satisfies other needs. So that root structure, that metaphor works for kind of how we've thought about and are building up our business from a technology footprint as well. So there is relevance there. This isn't just a made up name with some pretty colors.
no, it actually it resonates really well if you think about trying to update your whole stack and modernize and take those capabilities versus and having to have that whole infrastructure in place. So that actually does make a lot of sense. So can you start us off with a bit of a step back, though? Because we jumped into app modernization. I know what it is, but I suspect we have people in the audience who don't necessarily understand the term that well. And then also, why is it so important? It's a topic that just keeps coming up a lot lately. And so why do businesses care? Or why should they care?
At its core, app modernization, I mean, at its simplest definition, it's all about helping make old software new again. So in our case, we focus on business software. Mission critical, it still serves a purpose. The data that's there is tremendously valuable. The capabilities of older products, they were built for a reason. And organizations who find themselves wanting to still preserve those capabilities for a variety of reasons, how do we make the old software stack new again, still relevant, still reliable, cyber secure, performant, scalable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's really what it is from a definition standpoint. And the process of getting from old to new, app modernization, what you're largely doing is you're overcoming this nebulous thing called technology debt, technical debt. Technical debt is this fun thing that we play with, and the way we like to describe it, because we've lived in these shoes from an architecture, from a deployment standpoint, from a product development, product maintenance standpoint, at an enterprise level with some of the largest companies on the planet. It's not anyone's fault. It really isn't. The best product made 20 years ago is still broken today. It doesn't matter how well it was created. It may have been architected perfectly. It satisfies all the needs perfectly. It's just like the human body. As time goes on, things, they age. They stop doing what they were intended to do. When you think about the full spectrum of the ecosystem they live in, compatibility needs, performance needs, integration needs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So overcoming technology debt is really kind of what this whole thing's all about. And from a business criticality standpoint, with that definition in place, organizations who have these products of their own, and it doesn't matter if you're an OEM provider, you're building solutions for commercial purposes on behalf of customers, big or small, or if they're leveraged for internal business considerations. These might be back office applications that are still necessary, but nonetheless, when you've got these older applications, people get stuck. Organizations get stuck with the challenges in maintaining the older stack. You mentioned COBOL, that gets brought up routinely. Who are the people who can potentially work on that? So a lot of older applications can't even necessarily be confidently worked on because you don't have the people, or the documentation isn't there. There's no rich understanding of, if I touch this line of code, what else is going to happen? So people really get nervous about touching things, and the list goes on. But the focus or the drive towards relegating older applications just purely into maintenance mode for fear or lack of technical capabilities. You no longer have adroit personnel who are rich in their capabilities to actually move those older applications forward. So you're no longer innovating. You're no longer keeping up with your competitors. Your integrations are now failing. Maybe reporting against those older data sets has become a challenge. It just goes on and 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 on. Sure. So that, there's cause and effect here, but at the end of the day, app modernization, it's getting brought up. It's so prevalent for a reason. These applications satisfy needs, and how do we efficiently and effectively help get them back up to a modern, healthy state of operations from a performance standpoint, from a feature functionality standpoint, the ability to do more with these things if that's what an organization needs or wants. It's a real deal. There's a lot going on there.
It's almost overwhelming to just think about moving from point A to it is overwhelming, right? And that's hence why a lot of companies are where they are, because how do you begin that journey? What is the process and the approach that companies take to move down this path?
As in today's world, or maybe what people have been?
No, in today's world. Sorry. Well, actually, let's take that apart. Maybe we should look at how did you do it previously, and how do you do it today? What's changed?
Yeah, the previous piece, a lot of the options that have been historically available to organizations, and they're still out there today, but this is hence the dissatisfaction comment earlier. You can refactor older applications, so an existing team can go in and really look almost in piecemeal fashion. What are the technical elements that we should be thinking about working on in a prioritized fashion? And let's go fix this. Let's go modernize this. Let's make sure that we can do things in a componentized manner to where hopefully the integrity of the full application stack is incrementally seeing benefits. I often think about this as you're chipping away at a mountain. You're chipping away at this mountain called technical debt. So people see roadmap after roadmap after roadmap, making small improvements, but businesses are businesses. And again, whether you're commercial or not, other things come up. So are you focused on getting that done? Are you making real significant progress? Are you really achieving the outcome you want to get to in quick time frames? Hopefully, at least in reasonable time frames? Probably not. There's re-architecting, which is kind of really, let's tear this thing down from down to its foundation and almost start it over from a re-architecture standpoint and rebuild, a lot of those feature functionality and a newer tech stack, trying to, from a business continuity standpoint, don't screw up the business, don't do things that are too risky that, you potentially harm your existing customer base, whoever that might be. You can re-platform, which maybe you just want to leave the old application as is and think about going over to the existing platforms that might be out there who have more rapid application development capabilities. Things like Salesforce comes to mind. Maybe that works in some situations. It doesn't always. You might have to go through big data migrations where you're almost inevitably going to experience data loss trying to fit large data sets from an old technology base or a technology architectural stack into somebody else's version of what that might look like, feel like. So you're also introducing complexity and risk during replatforming challenges. And you mentioned also just jumping into the cloud. Maybe you just do a lift and shift, take what you've got, host it in a virtualized environment, let it sit there, let it continue to run and operate. But that in and of itself comes with cost. And, there's also benefits to it, managed services, scale, performance, which can be great. But at the same time, if the older application is still untouchable and you need to do more with it, did really all you accomplish is you went from one location to another and are still left scratching your head wondering, well, how do we make this thing better? How do we do more with this? You've still got that challenge that sits right in front of you. So
yeah, it doesn't really catch up to the technology capabilities or features and functions that you'd have maybe in a modern version of that application, right?
correct.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, so I know that you guys have a different way to approach this, and so why don't we get into that part of the discussion? Because I'm really excited about the idea of using automation in this process, but admittedly haven't really done a deep dive into what you guys are doing. So how does automation enhance the process of app modernization, and what are the benefits that that it brings compared to doing it this traditional way, lift and shift or rebuilding and that sort of thing?
One of the big things with our approach and why we're approaching it the way we are is because this is the life we've led. And the successful companies, the principals in the organization, myself included, we share 7 decades experience, enterprise software and services organizations. Been through M&A on multiple occasions. So not only individual products, individual companies that are kind of in our rearview mirror, been there, done that, seen that, but also then when you bring in multiple products sourced from multiple different companies, this challenge with different product, different tech stacks, different people working on it, different implementation styles, different source code management needs, different operational considerations, just different creates just this maelstrom of technical debt challenges. From an automation standpoint, what we try and do is our goal is to leapfrog a vast majority of those technical debt challenges that keep people stuck in a very short period of time. So you've got time savings that we intentionally focus on, standardization and bringing about consistency inside a portfolio's product technology stack. You shouldn't have to think that every different product shouldn't always necessarily require a different team of people to work on it, because they're also unique in their makeup. So bringing about standardization and consistency is critically important. Because of the speed with which we want to help organizations overcome a lot of this technical debt, there's an immediate opportunity to refine or think about doing something different. So from an automation standpoint, if someone can produce something for you very quickly, and you're in a couple of days' time presented this opportunity to look at it and say, hey, well, if these class files were organized a little bit differently, can we do that? Well, yes, there's plenty of opportunities to iterate almost immediately against what you want it to be doing, not just saying a like for like from a capability, from a technical capability standpoint or a technical construct, architecture included. We want to make sure that is enabled, and it needs to be another element that we focus on is it's got to be comprehensive. It can't just be here's a product tech stack. We'll stay away from buzzwords and architectural considerations, but you've got product source code, there are API needs, there are automation testing needs, there's deployment capabilities you should be able to have. You might need and want to even think about from a modernization standpoint. You might have database platform migrations you want to go through and do. If you do want to go from on-prem to the cloud, all these deployment considerations, the whole package really should be able to be brought along and made available out to a customer who's seriously considering thinking about a modernization set of challenges. Because when people start to think about the totality, the magnitude of realistically everything that an app modernization exercise brings about, it's really easy just to get scared away from it. And analysis paralysis is real. Perception is reality. And if you think the problem is too big to tackle, and you don't have anything to really work with quickly, seeing is believing. A lot of organizations, they're just like, we know this is risky. We know this is going to be expensive. We know it's probably going to take longer than we want it to. So they back away. And so they continue to fall further behind, because as time goes on, the problem just gets worse. This problem never gets better on its own. It doesn't. So we're trying to get to this point where we can really help people get to a point where whatever is remaining to bring about modernization against their, we'll call it portfolio, if it's application by application, if it's bigger than that, get them to a point quickly where the path forward, the remaining work required to bring about, the business value that didn't get done in that first pass, you've got, step 1, step 2, step 3. You're just down to a few finite elements that presumably the existing team can work on and just nail it and be done with this thing, to provide this ability to let organizations see it, know it, understand it, experience it, benefit from it, and start moving forward again. Start moving forward. At the end of the day, we think about this as we're trying to get people unstuck. If organizations are stuck, if you've got a lot of technical debt holding you back, we want to get you unstuck quickly.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess if you take that statistic that I gave at first, that 79% of the companies they surveyed said they had a failed modernization effort in the past. I mean, that must be even more daunting when you're trying to think about how you do this if you've already had a failure in the past, and then you're trying to deal with the cultural impact of that as well. So
yeah.
So what are your tools? Like, explain a little bit more about the automation piece of this, because I'm really intrigued by that. So what do your tools produce? How do they, kind of, what's the process like? What does it look like when you go in and you're working with a new customer?
So we intentionally cherish data. Data is key. Older applications, at the root of it, you've got features, functionality, workflows. At the end of the day, it's all, it's enabling capabilities for an organization to do something more efficiently than work with a spreadsheet. Got it, understood. But at the end of the day, if harm comes to the underlying data, you're screwed up. You're screwed up. So from an approach standpoint, and one differentiator for us, we start from the bottom up. So we work with the shape of the data, relational database schemas or others. We work with these databases to then start to run it through our proprietary engine and help build the new working version, source code, APIs, automation tests. And when I say APIs, that's REST and GraphQL. Automation testing is integration tests, thorough, comprehensive integration tests. They test both positive and negative integrations back through the API, just like a consumer would be, so that you've got one hardened, secure access layer into the database that also is taking into consideration business logic. So that, that's integration testing from an API standpoint. We also do unit testing. We create those. At a minimum, we're going to give you 75% code coverage. We use external tools to validate the code quality or the health of the code that we produce. We also do cybersecurity testing. We produce CI/CD packages. So from a deployment standpoint, when you need automated builds out to environments of your choosing, your configuration, we're vendor agnostic. We don't care if you go to the cloud. We don't care if you stay on-prem. But we can help you with CI/CD pieces. All of this is just part of what we produce in a very, very short period of time. Again, for the reason so that end organization, that existing team can look at something and be like, all of this scaffolding is now done. This is what we needed it to be. We've still got a few things that we need to do to capture maybe some workflows, bespoke business logic, but we're in a path. We're in a path to bring those pieces over, and whether we're going to try and automate that as well. Sometimes that works well, sometimes it doesn't. A lot of older product technology stacks, the tens to hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of lines of code. It's easy to call that business logic time and time again. A lot of times it's not business logic. A lot of times it's just messy because the original architecture or the original efforts to build an older application, spaghetti code is real. So you don't necessarily want to bring over everything as it originally sat with the older application. It's an immediate opportunity to rethink. So perfect example is older workflow-ish systems where everything was hard-coded, all the conditional checks, all the data evaluation elements, all the responses to triggers, notifications included, all that might just be some black box thing that sat in the background. It operates today, but it's tightly boxed. It does one thing and one thing only, tied to however it was developed intentionally a while ago. From a modernization standpoint, wouldn't an end user prefer the ability to configure, to be able to map, maybe drag and drop things? If this happens, go do that. Maybe put some controls, some power from a presentation tier standpoint into an end user's hands. So give them some power. So make this dynamic, make it configurable, make it usable in a way that they've never had an opportunity to do. They just did certain things that they're familiar with, but give them the power to benefit from how it used to operate. But then also, if they want to make some changes on their own, go ahead and do that.
Right.
So, at the end of the day, when I mentioned differentiator a second ago, if you look at a lot of, sounds like I'm trying to stand us on a platform. It's not. It's simply we chose a different path intentionally. If you look at a lot of new rapid application areas, you start with this UI and you get to drag fields in and you get to configure a few things up front from a feature functionality standpoint, which has value. It has tremendous value. But as those tools, just call it the configuration of those tools, the use of those tools to build some of these things out from a UI standpoint first, you cannot take those and immediately go point those out to that legacy data structure and have it work. You've created a gap between what you're seeing, a rich experience on a screen. Now, when you're trying to attach that out to what you've built up over time, the two they do not connect. They do not talk to one another. So you're left with a couple of options. Do you go through a huge data migration and change all of that data to fit this newer thing that you've been playing with? Risky, challenging. You're probably going to experience data losses. So we start from the bottom up for that reason. One of the last benefits there is if you have existing reports or existing integrations tied to that older data structure, still operable. So if you want to upgrade those at a later point in time, you're not forced to do that, right then, right there. You've got options.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. One thing you said I thought was interesting, and that's this idea that they're just things. There's code in there that nobody knows what it does, and then there's code in there that nobody understands how it does the thing it does. But you still have to be able to operate when you move this forward. But you can actually introduce some of the new capabilities, right? Drag and drop and ability to configure workflows and processes and that sort of thing as you're modernizing. So that's really interesting. I guess I didn't really think about the fact that there is debt in there that you just simply don't need, or that you need to provide in a completely different approach, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask the question on challenges, which Todd, you started going into, right? Thinking about what are some of the biggest challenges that organizations face when they're doing this migration. And you touched upon, the tech debt and the spaghetti code, and Michael, what you just said, right? Moving. I mean, it is the time to audit and say, do I really need this? But then that brings up my next question. How does this all play into your personnel, right? And your business operations? Like this is almost change management, not only technology, but also the individuals who you're working with on these projects. I have to imagine that there sometimes needs to be some education to get everybody on the same path, right, of migration, because it's more than just a tool that you're coming in and you're changing the way the tool operates. It's a change in process entirely. Yeah. Is that a challenge that you find as you're going into organizations? Do you find yourself kind of taking a step back and having to go at it from educating the individuals before you even get to the technology conversation?
It is, certainly. Change is hard. It doesn't matter what you do in life, right? Change is hard. So one of the biggest things that I mentioned, standardization and bringing about standardization and consistency earlier. There's when the way we operate again, and I would say, anybody who can help automate this process, you're gonna land and quickly have something to look at, to poke, to prod, to read documentation, to be exposed to quickly, that immediately serves as an opportunity to educate. And when you think about it, that's one product, and maybe that the group who's historically worked on the older version of that product haven't had the time to get to it, haven't on their own, of their own volition, kind of get the thing moved forward quickly. By us helping do that from an automation standpoint, they get introduced to, here's where you're going to park business logic that you recognize is still valid. If you want to make modifications against, the React-based UI that we provided you, if you're not familiar yet with React, well, you don't have to use React, but certainly there's an opportunity to now let the existing team kind of get involved and start to work with a newer technology stack, which might be really exciting for them because they've been working on something really, really old that doesn't meet the end user's needs time and time again. So there is a handoff here. And we treat this as it's a white glove, handoff that's got to be done. It's education. We're there to help make sure that what they receive from us is usable. All the deployment works. They can clone environments. They can start to do work on their own to just bring about the final changes necessary to fully modernize or finish the modernization effort. So yeah, but it is, it is a process. At the end of the day, we're helping create an upgrade for somebody else's software and existing software development team. Now we got to help make sure that they're able to do it. They see it, they understand it, they can work with it. So we temporarily, we host everything in our own private cloud environment where it's a safe, it's a sandbox environment to do all of these things, get used to it. And if they want to make a few changes, they can do that. We can, re-automate, re-implement, give them an opportunity to see those immediate changes made. We do all of that in a safe place long before we push it back over to them, back over to their source code management area and have it become theirs. But we're not here to just click a button, wave goodbye, and hopefully we get an email that says, yeah, it's going great. We want to be part of that change management process as well, because it's just part of life. No one gets a new technology stack and immediately gets it, knows it, and understands it in 5 minutes or less. But it's very standardized. It's very consistent. It's all based on solid SOLID, which is a legacy acronym, but design and architectural principles that they're there for a reason. They're there for.
And I'm sure that this varies widely, but is there an average in terms of migrating someone to the new platform? Is this months, years, weeks? I mean, what does the average look like?
The average, I'm glad you asked, is 92.7 seconds. That's it. I'm kidding.
You look really impressed, though. I got to tell you that.
I know. Did you see my eye shoot up? I was like,
wow,
shock, Todd.
Yeah, that's a real number. So kidding aside, sophomoric chiding aside, this is another one of the benefits of automation. Automation can provide a lot in a very short period of time. That's what this proprietary technology stack of ours is intended to do. So when we do majority of that giant technical debt leapfrog in minutes, maybe a few hours, possibly a couple of days. And so we rapidly position things. We get things to that spot where then let's go look at it, let the team start to digest this, figure out, we want a bunch of UI pages to look differently, put that in a lane. We can possibly put that in their hands to go do that work. If there's additional business logic, they're like, yep, no, we got to do these individual things. They can start to do that. So the upfront piece from an automation standpoint that gets a team so far down the path, taking care of all of that scaffolding, if you will, is really, really quick. And every application from that point forward is a little bit different. It might take a few weeks, might take a couple of months, just depends upon how much work they consider is remaining. But compared to the traditional approaches where you're kind of rolling the dice, you spend a lot of time waiting to see results, things have to happen incrementally. You shared some stories earlier, a group that we worked with, this story happens time and time again, but they originally budgeted for an app modernization exercise that they went through. They budgeted $8 million for the work. They targeted 14 months. And this was after a long buildup, project planning, really putting a lot of lead to paper to really figure out what they thought this was going to take. When it was done, it took them 12 million, and they spent 20 months for the entire project. And after that 20-month period, when they were done with it, they had the exact functionality that they had in the old application. Nothing was new. It wasn't exciting. They were also burnt out that they didn't even want to consider, like, now modifying it, enhancing it, actually now doing with it what they wanted to do in the first place, because it was just so time consuming, so complicated, so lengthy. So where things take on average, some of the statistics we look like enterprise, 16, 18 months is on average. We can get someone positioned in a few days to a point where they can figure out, now, what are we going to do for the next couple of months to really finalize this thing, while also at the same time introducing opportunities for innovation. So it's not always just a like for like that someone is looking to achieve from a modernization standpoint.
Right.
But they might want to be adding business value like that same day.
Yeah.
And they can start doing those things. They don't have to wait that 16, 18, 20 months before they can get the same functionality. Now they can start enhancing it. That person's 2.5, 3 years before they start to get new features, new functionality, new business value enabled for them. That's not what we want. That's not what we want to see people go through. That's not what we're here to help people achieve. That's not it.
Well, it was interesting when you were talking about the user perspective, right? And how quickly you can deliver this back. I mean, if I think about how quickly customer demand changes things, right? You start with a process and you're going down the path, and suddenly you have customers making requests, or the industry is changing and now putting the power back into the customer, right? That's a change to the UI that you didn't think about initially in your process. I mean, this is the opportunity to be able to expand very quickly with changes that are being driven from outside, right? From the customers making demands into what they expect from your software now. And it's a bit of a different mindset because the customers want to be able to do more on their own. And that requires some pretty significant changes when you're coming from legacy applications.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, and you're talking 20 months to get the same thing. Awesome. but maybe I actually needed some additional value in there. So, hey, I'm curious because obviously times is one sort of metric you could look at, I guess. But how do you measure success? What does success look like when you're working with a client, and what kind of metrics do they look at beyond time? Obviously, that's one. But
yeah, there's always a smattering of technical metrics. The dev team's velocity, what percentage of their time is allocated against maintenance versus feature enhancements versus new features entirely. Do you have automation tests? Do you now have automation tests? Do you have automated deployments? Do you now, before and after? So there's a lot kind of behind the scenes that can get looked at. There's also, though, that, the ones that I think are most important. At the end of the day, been in a technical role for a long, long time. Customer satisfaction, customer retention. Are they referenceable? Are those numbers improving? If they've been on the decline, some of those things would be motivations to get to a modernized state, if you will. Do those start to pivot and move in the right direction? If we can, from a time standpoint, quickly put something that's available, again, to be finished, to be fine-tuned, and that immediately also opens up opportunities to go into an existing customer base and be like, hey, we're on a path here to finish this thing. We know we haven't exactly been responsive to what you've wanted us to do over the past 2, 3, 4, 5 years, hypothetically speaking. Why don't you chat with us about what you want us to do now? I mean, what a tremendous opportunity to get back in front of people who you might not have been addressing their needs. Yes, it's had baseline feature functionality that they've benefited from over periods of time, but everybody needs something different over time themselves to quickly open up that conversation with them. And then also just adding new market opportunities. If you want to get out, even if you want to go start to talk to analysts, hey, we're coming out of this thing. We haven't been innovative for a while. We are now.
Yeah,
I think it's just an expansive opportunity to really be confident about who you are from a forward-facing standpoint, That's just there's so much tremendous value when you can start to be like, okay, what are we going to start doing now? Who are we going to go talk to? Let's go. Let's start moving forward now.
Well, and I think your point's interesting too, that says, you got to look at the specific application because, customer success, customer support apps, I want to see some improvement. If it's, financials, maybe I want to be able to do my quarterly close faster or monthly close faster, whatever it is. But it's very much in context to where was I in this application versus where would I like to go from a metric perspective. I didn't really think of it that way, but that actually fits.
Well, somebody that's starting off on this journey, right? What advice do you have for them as they start going down this path, right? You're moving to this, you're moving to application modernization. How do I even get started? What do I do? How do I incorporate automation?
I think one of the biggest needs that gets addressed easily is knowing and understanding, okay, what do I have? What do I have today? Here's the technology that we've got. Here's the products that we have. We go into it assuming that people already know and understand their own stuff, if you will, for lack of a better word. That just kind of, it's expected that's going to be known and understood very, very well at a finite technical level. I think when organizations are really talking to themselves about where are we at, are we really going to get serious about app modernization? They need to start thinking about where do they want to be, and probably break this down into two buckets. What do we want to see ourselves stop doing or minimize what we've been doing? We want to stop spending a bunch of money on virtualized environments against products that we can't touch. We want to stop feeling like we're losing market share. We want to stop feeling like the products that are in our care are so dispersed, they're so different from all the different product technology. We can't keep up with all of these things, and we can't just keep trying to ask people to work on older technologies. We're always in maintenance mode. We want to stop being that person. Then the next bucket is, what do you actually want to start doing? If in the next 3 to 6 months, you want to be back in front of your customers, you want to start thinking seriously about market expansion opportunities. If you've got a lot of products that might overlap, might have complementary features, functionality, it'd be great if we could maybe harmonize some of those from a rationalization standpoint and bring individual products into one solution. It's easier to sell, it's easier to maintain, it's easier to put in front of your customers. You want to start talking to analysts. What do you want to start doing? You build up that vision, if you will, and then, change management got brought up earlier. When you go into the organization, everybody who's here, be like, look, here's where we're headed, folks. You immediately get people excited about crawling out from, that rock that you've been stuck behind. You're moving forward for a reason. Build engagement from within the existing team. Build enthusiasm to be doing something newer, better. You're innovating again. You're moving forward. Growth is fun. Growth can be busy, growth can be challenging, but growth is always exciting. Being in maintenance mode, being stuck, maybe it's job security for some, but at the same time, who wants to go to their job day in, day out, time and time again, and just feel like you're static? You're static. Growth is fun. Innovation is fun. Moving forward is fun. Wins are fun. That to me, I think, is the approach that helps not just find compelling reason to do it, but it also builds that enthusiasm, that motivation, that excitement to go, let's go do this. And then the change management concerns start to go away. These people just start getting excited about, let's do this. Let's start going. Let's go. Let's achieve these goals. Let's hit these outcomes. Let's do it.
You're talking about something near and dear to my heart, because as you said that, what resonated with me, it sounds very similar to, a go-to-market approach from a marketing standpoint, where historically it was very siloed, right? So from an application perspective, you may have only been talking with the development team and the product architects, but in reality, what you just talked about, Todd, it's really bringing together everyone around the table, the sales, the marketing, the customer success, the finance, getting everybody involved in that discussion to help drive that next change, right? And kind of breaking down those siloed walls. So, I think we're starting to see a lot more of this collaborative environment within organizations that help, right, drive the decisions get the approval and move things forward a little bit more quickly, because you're no longer having to, justify and get other departments to say yes. So I love it. I love that you said that, because I'm like, yes, 4 people at the table making the same decision. Love it.
Yeah. Top down authoritarian models where this is what we're doing, this is when it's got to get done by, and there are going to be no exceptions. It doesn't work in business. It doesn't. And getting people on board, getting everybody on the same page, we're all moving forward and get excited about it. That's where you can actually, see real successes. That's another part of just that's what we want to help enable. That's the real goal of ours. Overcoming technical debt. It's like a high five in a hallway. We did it. You go to happy hour. Maybe you go play golf. We did it. Now what? It's not about the now what. It's not about overcoming. It's what's next. What are we going to start doing? Who are we going to become? That's where we want to get people.
Yeah, that's the exciting part.
And that's the clip I'm going to use on this. We're ending on the perfect note. That was perfect, Todd. That was the ending sound bite. That is
Nice.
all the time that we have for today. Todd, you did it. You survived the hot seat. So to everybody who's listening, if you have what it takes to be in the hot seat, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. That's it for this episode. Thanks so much for being with us. I am Jody Spencer.
And I'm Michael Fauscette. Tune in next time for different faces, different topics, different perspectives as we put someone different in the hot seat.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Todd.
Thanks.
Thank you.